12 years in the haunting woods. The bone-chilling return of a man transformed beyond recognition. In a whispered voice, folks in Maplewood spoke of him, Simon Grayson, the man who vanished into the haunting woods for 12 years. They said he returned, but not at all as they remembered. His eyes, once the shade of the summer sky, now glowed with an eerie, unsettling luminescence, like the moon casting shadows across a graveyard. Thickly tangled hair hung wild around his face, echoing the gnarled trees of that cursed forest. They claimed he'd been changed by something unspeakable, something that twisted him into a creature of nightmares. The very ground seemed to hold its breath as he drew closer, a hulking figure draped in tattered clothes that fluttered like wraiths in the wind. Rumors run wild in town. They say the woods were alive, whispering secrets to Simon, breathing life into him in deep, dark ways. Some claimed they saw him conversing with shadows, as if playing chess with ghostly figures dancing between the trees. He spoke in strange tongues, rattling off words that sent shivers down spines, leaving everyone who listened teetering on the edge of terror. People said they felt the chilling touch of dread every time he walked by, the sun dimming as if the shadows were swallowing the very light he dragged behind him. The wilderness surrounding Maplewood was unsettled since Simon's return. Animals roamed in strange patterns. Deer looked like phantoms darting past, while birds fell silent, as if fearing to keep their voices as he passed. A creeping fog lingered longer than it ought to, almost as if it were watching him, waiting. Some evenings, townsfolk would swear they heard his laughter echoing from the trees, long and hollow, raising goosebumps and cold sweat. What kind of haunted soul could bring such a presence back to the living? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But the strangest of all was when Simon reached out to the townsfolk. He wanted their help to seek something buried deep in the woods, something he claimed was calling to him. The air thickened with tension, and eyes exchanged uneasy glances in disbelief. What could possibly lie within that dreaded wilderness? What sort of madness had he brought back with him? People stood frozen, fear curling around their hearts as he smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just a bit too sharp. No one knew what shadows lurked deep in those woods and what truly awaited them if they dared to follow him. What transformation lay hidden in darkness, waiting to be uncovered? The atmosphere felt electrified, like the split second before a storm crashes down. As Simon stood before the gathered crowd, the townsfolk's faces twitched between disbelief and raw fear. The sun dipped low behind the trees, shadows stretching like grasping fingers across the dirt road where they stood. The once cherished familiarity of Maplewood faded, replaced by an undercurrent of dread that clung to everyone's skin like clammy mist rising from the ground. "Mama!" A small voice broke through the silence. A child clutched his mother's leg, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Is he a monster? The question hung in the air, heavy and cold, as all eyes turned to Simon. Each gaze felt like a stone, carving into his patience. No, not a monster. Simon's voice rolled out, deep as thunder but unsettlingly smooth. I am something more. I have seen what lies beneath the reality you cling to. I can take you there. He stepped forward, and the crowd instinctively recoiled. A low rustle of apprehension stirred among them, whispers flitting like startled birds. Why would we follow you? Someone shouted, breaking through the anxious tide of murmurs. You were lost. You don't belong to us anymore. The protest sparked a flicker of something dark in Simon's gaze, a flash of indignation that faded too quickly to grasp. Because what I seek lives in the woods, he replied, fire edging his tone. It is a truth that calls to me, a treasure buried under centuries of silence. His nostrils flared as he inhaled sharply, as if drinking in their fear, his eyes glowing brighter. I can show you glory, power, the very essence of life beyond your ordinary grasp. A chill swept through the assembly, chilling their bones. Simon's allure was both magnetic and terrifying, and for a moment, silence engulfed them once more, broken only by a distant howl threading through the woods. The sound, wild, sorrowful, sent another shiver down spines in the clearing. A tall figure emerged from the thinning trees, cloaked in shadows. The crowd gasped as a woman, her hair cascading like ribbons of night, joined Simon. Her presence seemed to amplify the encroaching darkness surrounding him, like his own sinister partner in an otherworldly dance. "Is it so bad?" she said, her voice like cold silk, "to be curious of the unknown?" Her eyes glimmered, reflecting the same undying glow that emanated from Simon. The Watcher's collective pulse quickened, fear blending with intrigue, unsure of where this seductive curse could lead them. "Join us," she cooed, beckoning with a delicate, almost hypnotic movement. "The woods reveal truths that transform us. Leave your shackles of fear behind." More gasps echoed. A few took tentative steps forward, drawn in by the beckoning promise of something beyond their mundane existence. But others clutched their loved ones tighter. Rooted in uncertainty, Simon leered, teeth like matted bones, and as the handful of willing stepped closer, a low, bone-deep rumble reverberated through the air. The confidence flared in him. "Do you hear it?" he hissed. "The call is louder now. It won't wait much longer." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, like warning bells clamoring for attention. The atmosphere shifted, pressure building like storm clouds pregnant with rain. Panic erupted in the group, people stumbling back, infants crying out, eyes darting toward the brooding woods. Far too late, Simon smiled, that eerie grin stretching impossibly wide. "You're part of my haunting now." Shadows danced around him, swirling like wraiths emerging to snare them. Just then, a deafening crack echoed from deeper in the forest, so violent and fierce it felt like the world was tearing apart. The winds howled, cutting deep as the ground reverberated with ancient energy. What had he awakened? What darkness prowled beneath those twisted trees? The townsfolk had only a moment to wonder before they realized. Something much worse was unfolding in the woods in that chaotic moment. One question haunted them. Would they heed the call or flee back into the light of day? As the fog swirled and the shadows thickened, the truth of their choice lingered, heavy as the dying light. What awaited them if they delved deeper into the forbidden dark? The ground trembled again, reverberating through their feet like the low growl of a beast waking from slumber. A collective gasp rose, a sound that felt almost primal. The townsfolk stood frozen, eyes fixated on the darkened woods behind Simon. Branches swayed violently, rustling with a malevolent whisper as if carrying secrets on the wind. "Back to the light," someone cried, breaking the trance that ensnared many. It was Mrs. Hargrove, a local elder who had once found comfort in the warmth of Maplewood's embrace. Her voice was a sudden spark igniting fear, and several broke away from Simon's shadow, scrambling to retreat. "Wait!" Simon's voice sliced through the chaos, a dark melody promising temptation. "You cannot escape what's already been awakened. This is only the beginning." The woman beside him, his shadowy queen, grinned, her teeth gleaming under the shroud of dusk. "You can't turn back now," she added, her tone laced with the kind of honeyed sweetness that charmed and repulsed in equal measure. "The woods will not allow it." Torn between the familiar warmth of the fading sun and the haunting shadows ahead, the townsfolk hesitated. The air thickened with tension, heartbeats pounding in their ears like war drums. Villagers exchanged frantic glances, some pleading, some drawn by curiosity. An unsteady flicker of light glimmered from the depths of the trees, revealing twisted shapes pushing through the underbrush, forming outlines of what looked like monstrous figures shrouded in darkness. "Look," a man shouted, pointing toward the growing shadows. We can't let it take us." The fear in his voice echoed around them. Simon watched with rapt attention as their bravado turned into sheer terror. It fueled him, feeding the power unfurling within. "Fated souls," he breathed, his eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. "Drawn to what they fear most suddenly, From the depths of the woods came a bone-chilling wail, a cry that seemed torn from history itself. It clawed at their minds, echoing deep in their consciousness, dredging up all that they had stuffed away in quiet corners of their hearts. One woman staggered back, clutching her head, screams bubbling up like bile. "Mama!" The small boy's voice shattered the night air, searching for his mother who had slipped into the crowd. His small form trembled. "I don't want to stay. I want to go home." The raw pleading of his innocence broke through the cacophony, the world narrowing down to that single trembling voice. Fear rippled through the crowd, many now stepping back, trying to escape the pull of the woods, but something held them fast like invisible chains. "Fear is a powerful tool," Simon called out, his voice low and thick with menace. "But so is desire, and I offer you all to partake of the feast within, should you choose." A shudder rippled through the crowd. The flicker of candlelight deep within the woods beckoned, promising revelations yet threatening the very existence of who they are. The urge to flee battled against the seductive call of the unknown, creating an unbearable pull that twisted the air, forming a tangible tension. The wind howled once again, carrying with it the scent of moss and decay. Twisted branches reached out like skeletal fingers, yearning to reclaim what had long been lost. "Join us," Simon's companion urged, her eyes glistening, almost hypnotic. "Leave behind your fear that binds you. Embrace the adventure." As uncertainty settled thickly in the air, would their souls surrender to the dark allure, or would they find the strength to resist? The ground quaked yet again, and as dread pooled in their stomachs, one last question echoed. What lay hidden beneath the roots of that ancient wood? The truth was hunting, and the woods were hungry. The wails seemed to ripple through the very fabric of Maplewood, seeping into the hearts of everyone present and twisting like a knife. Hands fell to sides, slack with fear, and a notable chill enveloped them, a tacit promise of despair. The air crackled with unease, and for a moment it felt as if the world held its breath. "Mama!" The small boy's voice pierced the silence again, this time splintered with terror. His tiny hands reached out, but the crowd was a wall, paralyzed, the weight of collective horror holding them fast. Mrs. Hargrove, the elder, turned towards Simon, her face a mask of defiance. "You think we will follow you into that hell? We know your tricks, Simon." Yet, even her voice trembled, uncertainty dancing in her eyes. She had watched Maplewood flourish and now decay. She had seen strange things in the woods, things whispered about in hushed tones. "Tricks?" Simon laughed, a low, throaty sound laced with dark amusement. "There are no tricks here, only truths, and I can show you who you really are, if you dare step into the dark." His voice hung in the air, thick with promise and possible doom. Suddenly, something stirred among the shadows of the trees. Shapes twisted closer, grotesque versions of the townsfolk, faces blurred, mouths opening to reveal elongated teeth that grinned ravenously. Fear mixed with disbelief as people took a collective step back. The light from the flickering candles caught the edges of their eyes, revealing a haunting vision. A figure emerged, the specter of someone they once held dear, long since disappeared into the gloom of Maplewood's dark past. It was Mary Atwood, the town's beloved herbalist, her features twisted in torment and a wildness in her gaze that screamed for release. "Help," she whimpered, the sound ragged and heart-wrenching. "Please, Mama," cried the boy again, tears streaming down his cheeks as he turned towards the figure, his small frame vibrating with desperation. I was now riveted on the apparition, fury and fear wrestling within them. Was this an illusion, or was there some truth woven in between those sobs? The air grew heavier, the scent of damp earth and grief clinging to their skins. "Join her, child," Simon whispered, drawing closer, his dark features illuminated by the dancing flames. "You crave love, understanding. The woods can give you that and more if you simply dare to step forward." As if pulled by an unseen force, the boy took a hesitant step forward, innocence battling against the tide of terror that gripped his town. The crowd gasped, breaths hitching, as a few desperate souls screamed, "No, don't." But something inside the boy, pure and untouchable, urged him onward, the promise of that familiar voice igniting a longing buried deep within. Join us, the shadowly being cooed again, its voice echoing through the trees. The pain fades in the woods. You can find your home, your answers. The darkness beckoned, cold and inviting, and each villager faced their own ghost within it. A cacophony of longing and dread enveloped them. Were they reaching for the past or inviting their doom? But then, amidst the shadows, a sharp roar disrupted the siren's call. Something larger than life erupted from the depths of the tree's branches, snapping, the ground vibrating with raw power. A figure loomed, tall and grotesque, a manifestation of the collective fears and regrets of Maplewood, and everyone felt their blood run cold. What have you summoned? It bellowed, eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. Your desires have awakened me. The townsfolk reeled back, their horror stretching to new levels as they stood at the precipice of chaos. Were they ready to confront what had been stirred up from beneath the roots? The woods hungered fiercely now, and every decision made could seal their fate. Would they surrender to the darker call, or would they fight back against the awakening beast lurking in the shadows? As the creatures swirled around them and the monstrous figure loomed closer, one question remained pressing on their hearts. What price would they pay to confront the demons of their past? The ground trembled as the towering figure shifted its weight, letting out another deep, resonating growl that reverberated through the very core of Maplewood. Each villager felt an instinctive urge to flee, yet they remained rooted to the spot, captivated by shock and fear. Face it, Simon shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. Embrace what you've hidden. Every one of you has buried something that craves the light. His words hung heavy, resonating with how each heartbeat matched the fear boiling in the air. The creature's fluorescent eyes scanned the crowd, displaying a hunger deeper than anything they could comprehend. Mama! The small boy cried again, his innocent voice piercing through the chaos like a knife. He took another unsure step toward Mary, the ghostly figure, oblivious to the looming terror beside him. The group was frozen, paralyzed by the weight of their own unresolved sorrows, their gaze alternating between the boy and the looming monstrosity. No! Stop! Yelled Mrs. Hargrove, her voice breaking like thin glass. She lunged toward the boy, but unseen roots wrapped around her ankle, dragging her back with a force that threatened to crush her spirit. You don't understand, boy. It's not what it seems. Simon smiled knowingly, as if the chaos fed him. What is reality but a selection of our choices? This child has the chance to choose truth. The wildness in Mary's eyes intensified. She reached out, her fingers stretching, imploring, but her expression twisted with pain, caught in an eternal loop of yearning. Help me, please. Then, with a deafening crash, the ground splintered as if a giant were emerging from the depths. They could see it now, the creature molded from the nightmares of Maplewood itself, its vast body covered in rough bark and streaks of shadow, reflecting the very fears that gripped their hearts. A twisted mockery of the townsfolk's past traumas. Sorrow, regret, guilt. Each emotion rolled off the giant like waves crashing against a cliff, creating an unsettling melange of despair. Genuine panic surged in the crowd. What have we done? A villager murmured, trembling, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The whispered fears wrapped around them like a thick fog, suffocating them as the monstrous being raised its arm, heavy and menacing. It opened its mouth wide. It wasn't just sound that emerged. It was the very essence of their regrets spilling into the night. You wished for answers. You yearned for understanding. It bellowed, its voice a chorus of haunting echoes. Now come forth and claim your truth. In that moment, the enormity of the decision pressed heavily upon each individual. Their secrets lay bare like open wounds, exposed to the primal force threatening to consume them. Would they tackle their burdens head-on or cower beneath the weight of what they refused to confront? The boy, glancing back at the villagers with wide, innocent eyes, took another tentative step forward. Mama, he breathed, hope twinkling in his gaze. Every gaze now shifted from Simon to the boy, a collective realization dawning upon them. What awaited them if they stepped closer? Would they find the salvation they sought or deeper agony? And then, as thunder rumbled through the trees, confirming the storm brewing above, an unfamiliar voice whispered through the crowd. "Join us, be free." An unsettling sense of betrayal seeped into their veins. Were they truly casting aside what made them human for liberation? In that moment, the boy reached out toward the specter of Mary, his small fingers stretching across the widening chasm of fate. What would happen if he touched her? Would the past claim him as its own? As the ground shook fiercely around them and the cacophony of voices rose to a crescendo, a single, haunting thought crashed over Maplewood like torrential rain. Would they bury their past or allow it to rise and consume them whole? With the boy standing on the precipice of choice, and the beast looming ever closer, time itself seemed to halt. What decision would the town make when the line between salvation and destruction blurred beyond recognition? Suddenly, the world held its breath. All eyes were fixed on the boy as his small hand reached toward Mary's ghostly presence. An electric pulse surged through the air, and the forest seemed to lean in, waiting. The creature shifted again, its massive body emboldened by the tension, its growl deepening into a throaty rumble that echoed like a warning through the trees. This was no ordinary night. It was a reckoning. "Mama!" The boy cried out once more, determination blazing in his blue eyes. His voice was a beacon that cut through the despair blanket shrouding Maplewood. That small hand trembled, the fingers almost brushing against the hazy edge of Mary's form a touch that could bridge the gap between the living and those tethered to the shadows behind him. Mrs. Hargrove struggled, desperation on her face as she shouted, "No, you can't, something terrible will happen." The tendrils that ensnared her tightened, wrapping around her fears like an anaconda squeezing its prey. One by one, villagers began to shift, the collective control of fear trying to crack under the weight of overwhelming emotion. "Don't do it," cried a voice from the back. "You'll doom us all." But even as it rang out, doubt seeped into their hearts, awakening long-buried sorrows. Was freedom worth the risk of restoration? The boy faltered, uncertainty creeping in, but Simon's voice interjected like steel slicing through a fog. "You can't hide from the truth. You wanted to forget, but those who forget are lost." His words ignited something within the crowd, a flicker of hope overshadowed by guilt, and then the ground shook more violently, cracking open like the depths of their conscience. Tendrils of anguish lashed out, grasping at their hearts. The creature, impossibly larger now, seemed to swell with the very chaos it had birthed. "Feel it. Embrace it. This is your chance." It roared, injecting doubt into the minds of the frightened townsfolk. "Help me." Mary's voice wove through the air, tinged with a longing that reached out like a forgotten melody. The boy's heart pounded. The distance between him and his mother felt like the vastness of the ocean, yet he was drawn inexplicably closer. Just then, a flash illuminated the darkening sky. Lightning danced across the heavens, silhouetting the creature against storm clouds boiling over Maplewood. The atmosphere was charged with an electrifying urgency that surged deeper than any primal instinct. "Please, come home," Mary whispered, her translucent form shimmering like stars in twilight. There it was, the haunting specter of misplaced love, the very thing that had held the town captive. The villagers felt their spirits waver, torn between the dread of their past and a desperate wish for rekindled connection. But just as the boy's fingertips brushed against the flickering edge of Mary's hand, he heard it, a wailing from the depths of the beast, a cacophony that spiraled into a symphony of lost opportunities and darkened hearts, reverberating relentlessly within his chest. The villagers screamed in unison, a chorus of raw humanity compressed into a single moment. Would their secrets truly liberate them or bind them forever in chains made of their own regrets? Caught in the throes of indecision, the boy hesitated. The storm above cracked open, a swirl of wind and rain sweeping through the town. Time stretched unbearably as everyone sensed the growing intensity. Would the boy choose the ghostly comfort of his mother, or face the infinite unknown masked behind the monstrous form? And then, against the roar of thunder, Simon's voice rose, a haunting promise echoing through the chaos. "Be brave. Fear is but a shadow. Let your truth light the way." With that, the world drew a sharp breath, teetering on the brink of a revelation. Would they reclaim their past or let it drown them in despair? As the boy steadied himself, one thing loomed ever more clearly. The choice was not his alone. But what if, in that instant, the truth they all feared was also their only salvation? And what if embracing it meant facing something far worse than they could ever imagine? The lightning struck as he made his decision, and the world of Maplewood spun toward an awakening that threatened to shatter everything into pieces. What would they become when the storm passed? The air crackled as the boy's fingers finally met the shimmering edge of his mother's apparition. A rush of warmth enveloped him, but it was quickly replaced by a bitter chill. It felt like stepping into a river of grief, smooth at first but soon dragging him beneath its dark surface. Mary's face melted into a twist of anguish, a reflection of the townsfolk's haunted souls. The creature's growl intensified, a thunderous warning cutting through the storm. Its presence twisted the very fabric of the night. The ground beneath shifted, revealing jagged edges and fractured earth. It was as if the whole forest screamed in protest, a living testament to the pain hidden beneath its roots. "No," Mrs. Hargrove screamed, her voice trembling. "You can't undo what has been done. It will consume us." Each word was a knife carving deeper into the boy's resolve. He glanced back at the villagers, their faces etched in fear, eyes wide with uncertainty. "But I can't just leave her," he whispered, feeling the gravity of his choice press down like a lead blanket. The wind howled, tossing leaves around as if trying to drown out Mary's pleading voice. "Stay with me, my love," she cried, her image flickering, caught between realms. The boy's heart raced with a mix of longing and panic. He was lost in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the spectral glimmer of his mother and the raw reality of his existence. Behind him, Simon stepped forward, fearlessness radiating from his presence despite the chaos unfolding. "This is the moment we face our beasts," he urged the villagers, his voice cutting through the storm like a lighthouse beacon. "Whatever price it costs, we can't let the past hold us hostage any longer." The boy's resolve hardened, and he turned back to Mary, meeting her gaze chillingly illuminated by the storm's flashes. "I won't forget you," he vowed softly, feeling the pulse of the collective heart around him. They were all intertwined, lost and yearning for redemption. Just then, the creature lunged, a grotesque snarl erupting as it barreled forward. But in that instant, a brilliant light burst forth from the boy's hand, igniting the air with radiant energy. The very world held its breath. The tendrils of darkness recoiled from the warmth as if the flame of truth were a barrier between them and the boy's resolve. The ghost flickered, and then for a brief, shimmering moment, she looked whole again. "You have the power, my love," Mary said, her voice like a soft breeze. A sense of love washed over them, mixing with the atmosphere of dread, igniting an ancient fire buried within the townsfolk with newfound clarity. The boy shimmied himself forward, and without hesitating, he joined Mary's hand with his own in the rift of unearthly light. Suddenly, a crack sounded, the blinding light imploded, and the creature howled in fury. It was the sound of centuries of pain unshackling. As the townsfolk stood frozen, watching in horror and awe, the ground began to swallow the encroaching darkness. Tendrils of chaos wrapped tightly around the creature, tugging it downward into the deep abyss of the earth, and with it, the secrets of Maplewood. The night erupted into flashes of light as voices released centuries of buried sorrow. Then, just as abruptly, silence fell. The air was thick with expectancy. Breathless, the boy opened his eyes to find himself and Mary surrounded by a bright light, shadows scattered like dust in the breeze. A surreal peace washed over Maplewood, but the thrill of uncertainty still lingered. "What now?" he whispered. But just as he spoke, a rumble echoed from the depths below. A low growl that sent a chill down everyone's spine echoed up from the earth. The darkness was retreating, yes, but something else was rising, something deeper, something long forgotten, and infinitely more terrifying. Could they truly escape the shadows of their past, or had they simply awakened a new nightmare? The whispers of the woods beckoned, holding secrets yet undiscovered. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the boy gasped, eyes wide with terror. The air tightened around them, as if a grip was closing, warning them of an impending danger. The villagers exchanged frantic glances, murmurings of doubt slipping between them. They weren't just free of the creature. They were on the brink of something worse, something ancient and vengeful. "What is that?" Simon stepped closer, the courage in his voice wavering like a candle in a bitter wind. The atmospheric tension grew thicker, wrapping around their throats, stifling breath and clarity. The growl from below rumbled again, deep and unsettling, forcing them to confront their turmoil head-on. "We have to leave now," shouted Mrs. Hargrove, her expression twisted in fear, but her voice barely made it over the rising crescendo. The villagers felt it, a pulse running through the ground, pulling at their instincts, urging them to flee. Yet, they were rooted like trees, frozen beneath the weight of their fears. "No," the boy's voice struck through the fear. "We faced the creature, we can't run now." He clenched his fists, summoning the flickering memories of the light that had surged from within him. "My mother, she believed we could end it." Just then, a blinding flash erupted from the depths below, illuminating the trees in an eerie glow. Amid the chaos, a figure surfaced, clawing its way from the dark. It was human, but distorted, bones jutting out at unnatural angles, skin pulled taut and pale as moonlight. The boy's heart pounded as realization settled in a lost soul, a reflection of the pain that had cursed Maplewood. Carter, the name slipped from his lips, barely a whisper, yet it carried years of sorrow. The villagers jerked backward, unveiling a mixture of pity, horror, and shame. Carter had been the boy who once played alongside them, now twisted by despair into something unspeakable. "Please," the creature spoke, its voice cracked and hoarse, filled with longing and despair. "Help me." The boy's heart ached at seeing a familiar soul trapped in this grotesque form. But would reaching out mean inviting more darkness? Could they even save him from the prison of his own pain? What if he's a trap? Someone shouted from the throng of villagers, their voices a mix of anger and apprehension. "No, we cannot treat him like the monsters before." The boy yelled back, desperation pumping through his veins. "He's still here somewhere." Then came a piercing scream that cut through the air like glass shattering. Mary's form wavered, fading with every note of anguish. "Don't let him take you," she warned, panic gripping her voice. "The darkness is deceitful." The air electrified, a mix of desire and dread entwined. The creature lunged forward, faltering on twisted limbs, face taut with desperation. "Help me. End it." The boy, torn between compassion and fear, stepped forward. His hands trembled, the warmth of his mother's love flickering like a dying flame. Could he truly fight darkness with compassion? With one brave breath, he reached out, but before their hands could meet, shadowy figures, shapes of despair intertwined with the memory of the townsfolk's lost hopes, began rising from the ground. They swirled in an ethereal dance, gnashing teeth and crying out haunting laments. "Don't let them drag him back," Simon shouted as he pulled the boy back. It was too late. The ground bucked, and the creatures began devouring the very light they had fought to contain. With hearts racing, the villagers realized their choices had consequences that echoed beyond the surface. Together, the boy shouted, feeling the weight of the moment crash down. "We can't let him fall." But a powerful force surged from the earth. The pulse was now a violent shake, a promise of obliteration. As the shadows roared, the villagers aligned, hand in hand, drawn into the boy's resolve. Yet deep beneath the earth, another force stirred, equally hungry, equally relentless. What emerged from the shadows would change everything. Would they endure, united against the storm, or claim yet another victim to despair's terrible embrace? A whisper floated through the air, beckoning them into the unknown, leaving them teetering on the edge of salvation or doom. Would the villagers of Maplewood unlock their past or succumb to the haunting void beneath? The boy squeezed his eyes shut, the weight of every heartbeat reverberating in his ears. As the shadows writhed around them like a tempest of despair, their cries made the air thick and suffocating. He felt the pull of darkness deep within his gut, a terror clawing upwards. "Hold on," The words sprang from his lips. He could feel the collective energy of the villagers, the push and pull of their fears and hopes intertwining. They were pulsing together, desperate to resist the abyss. Just as a black wave surged forward, there was a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The shadows recoiled as if repelled by something. The boy glanced at Simon and Mrs. Hargrove. Their faces were pale but determined. The fire in the depths of their eyes flickered like a last stand against the dark tide. "Carter!" the boy yelled, forcing himself to focus on the twisted form emerging from the ground. "We're here for you." Carter's eyes, now sunken and glassy, met his gaze, and something flickered in them, a glimmer of recognition. The boy stepped forward again, the villagers bracing themselves, hands tightening around each other's wrists. "We can help you. You're not lost." "Help me?" Carter echoed, his voice distorting, a mix of hope and torment. "You don't understand." But with that, the shadows lunged forward, a raw desperation fueling their eruption. The monstrous forms twisted, clawing at every glimmer of light, as if angry that someone would dare to defy them. "We have to go," Mrs. Hargrove cried, her voice snapping like a twig underfoot. But the boy shook his head resolutely, stepping into the chaos. "Not yet," he shouted. "Carter, listen to me. You're still in there. You can fight this." As if reacting to his words, the shadows hesitated. The boy felt the ground tremble and twist, a heavy weight pressing down, begging for surrender. "Help me," Carter implored, the desperation sharpening, brimming with pain too profound to fathom. Suddenly, a deep rumble broke through, mixed with an anguished wail, spilling from the depths below. All eyes widened as a massive, gnarled hand emerged, huge and rotting, fingers grasping hungrily as if to ensnare them all. It was the heart of darkness, lurking beneath the earth, awakened by their collective fear. "Squeeze my hand," the boy yelled, gripping Simon's tight. "We have to push against it together." The villagers latched onto one another, a pulse of warmth blossoming against the relentless cold. Uncertainty hung like fog, but there was a growing strength, a flicker of collective belief building against the odds. As the hand reached closer, the boy felt a rush of warmth from within, the same light that had awakened before flickered again. "Remember what we fought for," he urged, fear morphing into rising defiance. With their hands connected, the grip of terror weakened, the shadows recoiling, though still clawing at their resolve. The monstrous hand hesitated, sensing the flickering flame of hope that ignited amongst the group. But then, the air shattered as screams erupted, a cacophony of despair swirling around them. "Don't let it take you. Fight back. Fight back." Mary's voice vibrated through the chaos as if fueled by her words. The boy closed his eyes, focusing on the love he had known, the memories of laughter, warmth, and kindness washing over him. He felt the light gather, pushing outward, a force amplifying as their intentions merged. "Together," he called again, trembling under the weight of their fight. "We are the light, and we won T back down. Carter, we won T leave you." But then, the ground erupted. The hands struggled against their united front, shadows surged, and the bone-chilling truth dawned: one soul trapped in darkness could not be freed without a sacrifice. A painful choice that would push them to their limits. In the thickening storm, the boy felt the first sharp pang of betrayal slice through the group. Each villager's heart ached as they faced the daunting question. How far would they go to save one of their own? Would their fight against the darkness swallow them all whole? Would the villagers stand as one against the consuming tide, or would they fracture under the pressure, leaving their hope behind as they faced the choice of saving one and losing all? As shadows loomed and darkness surged, it was clear every decision would echo louder than the last, and sacrifice might just become their only salvation. The storm raged on, the howling wind mixing with the anguished cries of the villagers. The boy felt the weight of hope pressing down on him as he looked around at the faces of his neighbors. Their eyes bold yet riddled with fear. They were intertwined in this moment, standing together on the precipice of unimaginable choice, hearts wound tight like a string ready to snap. "Carter," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We will fight for you, but we need you to fight for yourself too." The raw insistence of his words seemed to float through the air, meeting the twisted figure that once embodied a familiar spirit. The darkness was relentless, clawing against their warmth, shadows writhing like snakes eager to ensnare them all. But through those strands of night, Carter's sunken eyes flickered, glimmers of the child they all once knew surfacing for a split second. "I want to fight," he rasped, his voice laden with pain and desperation. "Then hold on," the boy urged, squeezing the hands entwined in his own. "We are stronger together. Let us face this thing together." He glanced at Simon and Mrs. Hargrove, each of them steeling themselves alongside him. In that moment of unity, a pulse of warmth radiated from the boyish heart, a power ignited by memories shared, love treasured, and dreams once dreamt. The shadows shrank back like wretches startled by the dawn. He could feel it coursing through the villagers, building momentum like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. "Remember your true selves," Simon shouted, his voice resonating through the storm. "This darkness preys on your doubt. Cast it out." The villagers focused, hearts pooling their strength. They remembered the laughter of children, the warmth of shared meals, the bonds formed in countless moments throughout their lives. A wave of light surged from them, tangible and radiant, driving back the tendrils of darkness that threatened to ensnare Carter. But then came a spine-chilling roar from deep within the storm, an earth-shattering growl that rippled through the soil. The monstrous hand, twisted and gnarled, lunged closer, fingers curling as if to snatch their light. The boy's heart raced, and from somewhere within the depths of despair, he felt the pulse of another decision echoing through him. "No," he shouted, lending his voice to the chorus. "We cannot lose what brings us together. With each of our stories joined, we can break the darkness." Their hands grasped tighter, every villager anchored in this force of shared intention. On the count of 3, he called out, "We push together. 1, 2, 3. An expulsion of energy erupted from their linked hands, spilling radiant light into the storm. It pierced through the air, illuminating like an ancient spell tethered to love and unity. Carter's figure began to shimmer, his pain-stricken visage catching the glow. The boy saw him shifting, a transformation beginning to unfurl. "Hold on," he cried, urgency rushing through him. The light blazed brighter, and Carter began reaching out a skeletal hand seeking connection. "Reach back." Their voices echoed, uniting in fervor. Carter extended his arm, the shadows recoiling with a murderous shriek. The darkness was losing power, unraveling with every ounce of love poured into this moment. And in a final surge, the boy's heart ached for every soul gathered before him. They were not simply fighting the darkness. They were awakening what had been dormant for too long: acceptance of their shared pain, their memories, and love, reborn from ashes of suffering. The ground quaked violently as the monstrous hand lunged once more. But now the collective energy pooled and swelled around them like an impenetrable shield. Together, the villagers shouted, unifying into one voice, and as the shadows halted, they surged with ferocity, pushing against the very heart of their fears. Just as the hand broke ground, the light exploded outward, imbued with all of their raw humanity. The shadows screeched in agony, dissolving to nothingness under the human resolve. A brilliant whirl of luminescence spread like wildfire through Maplewood as the darkness shrunk beneath waves of acceptance. "Carter," the boy cried as the figure unraveled in luminous threads, the remnants of sorrow and fear carried away like smoke with the wind. A glorious light bled through the village, a healing glow that beckoned forth the living spirit of Maplewood, igniting a bond stronger than the darkest of nightmares. Then, silence enveloped them as they stood amidst the remnants of chaos. The air grew still, and as the shadows faded away, a soft breeze began to lift their hearts. Hope threaded its gentle fingers through every mind, reminding each villager that they were not alone. The boy turned, catching a glimpse of Carter, no longer twisted but a vision of the boy he once knew. "You are free now," Carter smiled, and with that flash of innocence, they embraced the warmth of the dawn that finally broke over Maplewood. Tears fell, mingling with relief, as they gathered together, hearts intertwined and spirits soaring. In that defining moment, they remembered, Every choice, every piece of shared past, had forged their future. Now the town could truly heal not as shadows of what once was, but as a community ready to embrace the light. And with the sun rising over the horizon, a new day dawned for Maplewood, filled with promises of love, growth, and untold stories waiting to be shared. But before you leave this story behind, we need your incredible support. You need to subscribe now to catch every exclusive tale we share. Smash that like button now to boost our community. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this epic conclusion. And don't let your friends miss out. Instantly share this video with at least 5 people who need this closure. This is the moment to show your support and keep the stories flowing. Don't wait even one more second.